Mino Line Media presents the Business First Podcast.
Hi, all, and welcome to a new episode of Business First with Sonia Alleyne. I am your host. And today in studio, we have the pleasure of having Watson, who is the author of Black Tech, Yesterday, Today, Tomorrow, Leaders in Technology. Welcome, Theresa. How are you?
Thank you so much, Sonia. Thank you for having me.
So this book, Black Tech, in preparation for the interview, I listened to a couple of other interviews that you had done that are on social media, on YouTube, and I encourage other people to listen to them as well. It is, I've met so many people that have this interest to write books, but what was it about this particular one that you thought was important to bring to students?
Well, it was important, Sonia, because there's a lot of history and a lot of things that African Americans have done for the development of this country. But we don't see it. It's not something that's profoundly known. And so what I've done is written the book to first to third grade level, but it's for everyone. I will tell you briefly that I sent the book out to a lot of people between the ages of 20 and 85, and no one came back knowing more than two people. Well, our history is so rich. That says a lot to you about the knowledge that we have about our own selves. So that was my motivator, is to get it out and have that early stage. When you go to school, when you get exposure, you'll always already be rooted in who you are and your purpose, and your your self-confidence is there. You'll have the pride already, but when you try to get it, I'm not saying you can't get it when you're in 12th, 11th, 12th grade, but if you take it with you, it has a profound impact on how you view life.
Listening to one of your interviews where you talked about that, how most people didn't know many of the figures that you featured in the book. It took me back to a time when I think I might have been in second grade, and I was arguing with someone about important people in our culture. And the guy was white, and the only name I knew was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And you said that. You talked about how, that's what we're taught in school. That's the name we're given. We may have been given Malcolm X, but that's the name that we all know. And, of course, growing up and learning about our history and all of the things and all the different ways we have contributed greatly in this society, it's with tools and with devices and technology that we all use, right, that have benefited everyone in society. It's amazing that we don't learn these names at an early age where we could really feel proud about our accomplishments in this country. And so how many people have been featured in this book?
Well, in all the books that I write, unless I'm writing specifically about men or specifically about women, all the books I write will have 7 African American men and 7 African American women. And there's great history in a lot of the other brown people, but my focus is African Americans. And so I got a note today about will I be writing for anything about the greatness of the Hispanic population? And I said no. And that is true. My focus is African American. Right.
What has been some of the feedback that you've received from students and adults in terms of the information that's available through your book?
Well, for the adult side of it, I get the messages that I didn't know any of the information. Are you going to continue this pattern? Because I just pick it up and read it, and I can read the whole book. And my kids, I read it to my kids over and over again. That's what I get from adults. From my other ethnic groups, they call to verify the validity of some of the information. Not many. They just says, "Are you sure about Lewis Latimer? Are you sure about Frederick Jones?" So then I find myself, I'm not offended by it because they have spent their entire life learning and thinking that other people have created some of these things. And for Frederick Jones, when he created it, we had limited exposure to certain jobs, and so he was a delivery of medicine. And so by the time he got to some of the hospitals, the medicine had gone bad. And so what he had to do, he created the refrigerator truck for his, because he was trying to solve a problem. And so that is something that I really, because we lack the critical thinking skills in our school the way the way they used to be, it's harder for people to say, "Oh, there's a problem. Let me see what I can fix it or expound on it." But if you look at those the invention, all of them were expounding or solving a problem. And so that's one of the tools that I'm not going to say come natural for us, but that's one of the tools that I think that people forget, that we just really had that. We bought things with us from Africa. We brought knowledge with us, and it's not like we didn't have that. Louis Latimer was an apprentice with his father. I mean, with apprentice for Edison, but he worked with his father in a lot of spaces. And so it's like I just had a conversation with someone that had bought into the theory that African slaves could not read. And I said, well, that's not true. What they couldn't do is read English. They read their language quite well, so their language, they didn't have a problem with it. But then you bought into another country and you can't read their language because that's not what you're accustomed to. So I go to France. I don't speak French, but that doesn't make me not be able to read. But we'll say, well, the slaves couldn't read, or we taught the slaves to read. And no, the slaves could read, they just couldn't read English. So it's a lot of things that we bought into. And I'm trying to say, don't purchase everything that somebody's selling you. Like if we knew that Christopher Columbus did not step foot in America, but even when you hear that he didn't come to America, you still will repeat that Christopher Columbus discovered America. And even these are critical thinking skills. Even when you hear that the Indians and some Black people were here, you still will say he discovered America, knowing that you can't discover something where people already exist. You see, but so if you invoke your critical thinking, you'll be able to question some of these things that we've just bought into.
How do you get, again, I've heard you talk about the importance of critical thinking and how it's something that we've lost in our educational system. Is that one of the things that you are hoping to encourage through this book and others?
I am. That is, it is a truly, truly necessary tool for your development. It's truly necessary. And you will always be at the mercy, if you will, of other people when you can't be creative, when you can't be a critical thinker, when you rely on, it's okay to be able to use material that you have to, the way I learned my timetables was I just, I learned the 2s and the 3s because we got them on a little card. This is back in the day where the insurance man gave it to you. And you learned your 12, it was 0 to 12. And it's just repetitiveness. And that's how I learned them. But the concept, I had to learn the concept of multiplication. I had to learn the concept of multiplication is really a version of addition. So you don't have to count out 669 times 580. You don't need the whole 600, So, you learn those critical thinking, but it doesn't take away that, yes, simplification may be necessary, or repetitiveness may be necessary. But if I did not learn some of the other concept, I would still have some major problems. And you could see this when you're talking to some of our kids and some of their parents. Some parents really struggle in this space.
Well, and you said too that the parents don't understand the importance of really pushing that in their children's education. We really do we've been following the lead of the educational system and the educational
Mm-hmm.
system hasn't really advanced, particularly in public schools in particular neighborhoods. They just really haven't advanced in terms of learning techniques and procedures to encourage kids to think that way.
Well, I will say that it used to be, you take John Hope Franklin School, this was in 1922, 1920. They took the intergrade test. Um, they took a test and they scored higher than any school, not black school, not white school. We had plenty school districts that were scoring higher before 1964, higher than some of the state average. The black people were doing well. I went to all black segregated school, not like in Philadelphia. You might find a lot of schools that's all black, but they're not. It's not mandated by law. They just happen to be that because of their location. And so sometimes what you will find is that we have to push for things. We had it, and some way we lost it, because we never had the struggles that I never remember having behavior issues in my classroom. I never remember having a child failing in English or math where the teacher didn't intervene and get you on track at that grade level, so you could pass to the second grade. So any deficiency, because I had a speech issue, and Miss Harrison, I don't know how the process she used, but she got someone to come in that was majoring in that area to come in and work with me. And unless I talk absolutely too fast, then you may not know it. And then if I'm reading, there's still sometimes that I see words coming together that I have to, slow down and break down. But nonetheless, there was always a method that we used to help solve the problem. Now we got our kids graduating from high school. Instead of trying to fix the problem at an earlier age, when they get to 12th grade, you have developed 5 or 6 methods that you can use for them to graduate from high school. Now, that doesn't make good sense. And the reason why is that one of those methods they're going to be able to pass on. And now you got a kid that's graduating from high school without the necessary tools to maintain a productive life in society.
One of the other things that you said that lacks nurturing, that's also very important for a student, or for a child in general, is their passion, is recognizing the
Yeah.
passion in the child. And you said that it doesn't matter where they are, right? It doesn't matter what their socioeconomic background is that if you can nourish the passion in a child, then you can encourage the learning, and you can encourage interest, that they can actually find their purpose in life. And I thought that was extremely powerful.
That is true. I work with a program, and it's called 3Ps: passion, pursuit, and purpose. But one of the things that we have as adults is that sometimes we try to have the kids fill the space that we left empty. And so that's really never good. If the kid happened to like engineering, it's one thing. So I work with students. I've worked with students a lot, in a non-teaching way, like families, African American families, kids that need tutoring, kids that have behavior issues. I worked with one kid once, where his mother said she just can't do anything with him. I have a bunch of, I won't say a bunch, but I have standards. So kids don't really give me a whole lot of headache. So I had this kid for the summer, and in the summer we get up at, it seems a little early, but when you got 6 kids, early is good. Our first tennis lesson was at 7 o'clock in the morning on Saturday morning. He had never played tennis, but he got up and started playing tennis and met Serena Williams. He became so good. He played against her in New York. He got a tennis scholarship for college. And this is a guy that was on the road for, I don't know what, but he wasn't on good track. So that worked out pretty good. And so when I talk about nurturing your passion, there was another student. Now this is, I have friends in a lot of different backgrounds. So his father worked on cars. And so he would help his father. But when you go to his classroom, he knew a lot about cars by the time he was in second grade, because he'd been, oh, Daddy, let me do this, and Daddy, let me do that, and And so the funny thing is that I also have a friend that is a chair of the biology or one of those departments at the university. So when the teacher goes in, she talks to, let's call him John. She talks to John about biology, whatever department he was in. I'm just going to say biology for now, but it was one of the sciences. And she talks about measuring, and she talks about the different components and what you have to do to get there. And this is like in the second grade, first or second grade. But when it came down to Steve, where his father worked on a car, she never would think about it. So I said to her, I said, you're always calling him out, or you're calling this person out about their parents that work in these professional jobs. But what you don't see is that, here is a kid that knows everything about a car, and maybe not everything, but he knows how to measure. You're always talking about how great his math skills are. He tells you how long, he does estimation very well, but you don't acknowledge that kind of stuff that he's getting exposure to with his dad. That's his passion. This kid is in like first or second grade talking about he's going to design cars. Why would you not, embrace that? So we have to really retrain our people, and not just our people plus the teachers, to include them in that talking process, because that gives them reassurance that, she acknowledging that, yes, I have these skills.
What have you learned that you think would be helpful to parents and educators that you have noticed in terms of, that's an excellent example of what teachers may miss, but the valuable points in a student that they may miss. But what else have you learned that you think might be helpful, that parents and educators should be paying attention to when they're guiding kids?
Well, this is not going to be popular, Sonia.
We're here for it.
Okay, so one of the things I think parents is that they need to be mindful of their spending. And the reason being, we're not spending as much time with our children. So our children get up and go to school at 7 o'clock in the morning. They get home at 3, 4, 5, and you get home at 6 or 7, just in time enough to prepare something for dinner or buy something. So time is important for children. So if you're not spending time with them, what happens is you allow a big enough gap for other people to put their value system into your child. And so it's not the most popular thing to say, but that is something I think. One of the parents that I work with, I tutored all her kids. And one of the things I said to her was, she always talking about how much she worked. I said, well, I don't want to get into anything personal, but you spend money buying things that you can't afford and you don't need. So consequently, you got these kids here where you pride yourself that you get up and your first job assignment is at 5 o'clock in the morning, and while your kids are still in bed, and all your kids are in elementary school. And then you take your second job at 2, and you leave your second job and you get home at 11 o'clock at night, and you've left your kids. And her response to me was, my kids know how to fend for themselves. They were in third, fourth, and sixth grade. And so, you can look like you stepped out of Vogue magazine, or you belong on the cover of Ebony, but your home is falling apart. And what it have yielded to her is some very negative outcomes. And people don't think about, do you really need that sofa? Do you really need that $2,000 sofa? No, You could have went to Goodwill, covered it up, and made it fit until you know, till you decide, I'm gonna save $50 a month because I want to get this. But it's a process. So that's what I see. And with teachers, sometimes we had a little boy. His parents were going through something when I was in school. But Miss Harrison, which is my absolute favorite teacher, Miss Harrison had clothes. She had bath cloths. She had towels. She had soap. She had deodorant, all at school. And these two kids, and so when they come to school and they're not clean, because we have to play outside until school, they open the door. She always allowed them to come in, wash up, and do that, put on clean clothes. And you didn't never knew the difference. You never said anything because it was, And so these are the things. And when we left for school, they always had a bag to take home in their sack. The book bags are different than they were then. She made sure that they always took a bag lunch home so they have something for dinner. And it was the quietest thing in the school. And, I have never to this day really hear people talk about them or the fact of what Miss Harrison would do for them. So now we have such profound system that people try to hide things from the system. So it's almost harder to help. But when we were united as Black people, we made sure we took care of our people. You often didn't find hungry Black people, so you took care of them.
It's, I hadn't thought of it until you just said it, but yeah, it does seem because of all the systems we have in place, it is harder to help, right? Because doing something like that could get you written up, or is not part of the protocol, or it would be deemed improper. But those are the things, like just caring about the children is what helps make the biggest impact on them.
That's true.
And you yourself have raised 6 children. In modern times, that's not an easy feat either. So congratulations on that. What have you learned in parenting? I love what you said about time, and I get that you said that it's not a popular sentiment, because when parents complain about time, it's usually work. Right? It's usually the hours that they feel that they have to dedicate so that they can provide for their children. But what have you learned in the raising of six children?
Well, I am probably like everybody else. I want this, I want that. I want my house to look a certain way. Well, in the bigger scheme of things, my husband is deceased, but we made the decision that I would stay home for a while. And because when you start adding up the dollars, it's not practical. I had 4 kids in 6 years, and so, my kids are stair-step. And what I did learn is the engagement. However, the engagement I gave them when they were younger, most of them are really great critical thinkers. However, when they got older, I took pride on taking my kids to school. Even in DC, I would walk to school, and my oldest child walked to school in DC and pick him up and walk back home. I did work, but it was such that I could just pick him up and walk back home. So when the kids were like in middle school, high school, junior high, I took pleasure in picking them up and bringing them home and listening to what they had to say about school, about anything. That was our table topic. And so now we have kids on the run, parents on the run. So no one is sitting down at the dinner table having dialogue, even though it seems such an old-fashioned thing. I think that the importance of it have yielded some great things, have allowed you to think about the things that you have done. Now, what I tell people, there's no such thing as a perfect parent. I can actually watch my kids and see my mistake in some things, and I tell them so. But I also tell them now that that you're grown. It's nothing I can do. I can acknowledge, but I can't do anything about it. Just fix it, And so you got to show that you care. You got to be mindful of, like when I'm tutoring, the parents can't talk to the kids in a kind of way. You can't call them stupid. You can't call them names. The kids start to live out what you call them. That's why when I hear an adult say to a man, "Come here, man. I'll do this, man. Do that." And so, if I'm tutoring you, I ask the guy. I said, "Now, what is a man? What does a man look like?" He goes, "So this, you just call your son a man. So your son goes to work. He pays the bill. He provides for the family. He fixes the car, provide gas, keep the car clean. I'm just fix that plumbing leak that you keep talking about." So is he going to take on the perception that I've been a man since I was 6? I didn't do a thing. So why am I trying to go to work? Because they've been calling me man since I was 6. You take on different things, and that's a little extra. But it always tickled me when I hear people call their little boy a man. And I tell my girls, not just my girls, but people I work with, every girl would be a girl, and every girl would be a woman, but not every woman would be a lady. And people need to be mindful of how they're training their little girls. It's just, it's a lot in parenting. So my thing is to get it halfway right, or right to a point where your kids are respectable, decent human beings. That's what I try to tell them. Now, I do have 3 girls and 3 boys, and I must say that they're pretty decent people. Pretty decent people. As I said, there's no perfect parent, but I really do enjoy them.
No, you're
I
absolutely
enjoy
right.
them.
They're no perfect humans, but when you can look at your kids and call them
Yep.
decent human beings, that's a
Yep.
very good thing today. What else can we expect from you in terms of books, ideology, and thoughts around educating and raising strong young people, strong children?
Well, one of the things I will say, I do have another book coming out called Blacks in STEM, and I'm looking forward to that because when I started writing these books, one of the things I wanted to be able to captivate the young people, and so in order to captivate them in a way that I wanted to, you need to make sure that they be able to identify with it. And technology, they definitely could identify with every item in the book, in the current book. And that book is being reissued because we're adding an activity section to it. And so that will be out at the end of September. And then STEM will follow, hopefully, for the holidays. And what my goal is right now we're working on an academy, and we're going to roll out Lead and Read in January, and that is where the African American Church will join Synergy Training Solutions, and then their members will get an African American student, and between the ages of 4 and 19, and that student will call that volunteer mentor once a week. Everything is done over the phone once a week, and read to them for 10 minutes. And because it is my belief that major change in our community is going to be done by us. And so the churches have had such a profound impact on the growth and development of African American in civil rights as we know it. And it's like a perfect place to start. So we have that coming out in the academy. The academy will also do parent training. We have a lot of other things that's coming out there in January. So we're rolling things out right now. And so I'm actually having fun, but it's taking a toll right now because I am in school, and it's just, and I'm having fun with it. but I work a lot.
I'm glad you mentioned it. We didn't get to talk
Yeah.
about it, but tell us a little bit about Synergy Training Solutions. That's your organization, right?
Yeah, it's a nonprofit that I run, and Synergy Training, um, it would focus on advocating for African Americans, and sometimes I do other groups in there because I have worked with Hispanic and Asian population, but my primary focus is African American. To advocating for them, teaching them how to, because we have issues sometimes when our kids go to school.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes what we'll do is to teach you how to engage, um, and really look at the problem. Because sometimes, sometimes, Sonia, because you feel like your child is attacked, you go into defensive mode, but you don't really get anything accomplished. Well, what the kids see is that my mom is going to protect me no matter what. And that has some pluses and minuses to it. And so you start positioning your kids to feel like you're going to protect me, you're going to protect me. So the accountability is not always necessarily there when you do it that way. And so I've found, being that I've been engaged in that for a while, I know it when I say it, and I get along with mostly everybody. Um, and so it's been a nice journey to help people be able to navigate school. It's been a nice journey.
Well, thank you for all of the
So
work you do. I love your perspective, and I love the care and the passion that you have for young people. Please tell us where we can follow you and purchase your books and look for your upcoming book. I know Black Tech is on Amazon, and so we can
it
support you
is.
there. But your socials,
My social is Black Tech Book, and both uh, Instagram and Facebook. You can get it on Instagram. And so all my social media handles are Facebook. I'm sorry, Black
Black
Tech Book. And yes. And then you can order my book from SynergyNetworkLLC.com. SynergyNetworkLLC.com is a good place to
All right.
order it from. But I really have enjoyed this because I always enjoy talking about the African American
Yeah, I
community
can tell.
because I believe that there's so much strength in us. And so as I talk about the passion, the pursuit, and the purpose, I look at, and it hasn't happened yet, but I want to be able to see the person that was on the wrong track be able to start fulfilling their purpose. And so if you can look at a number of African Americans that are in prison, 50%, over 50% never graduated from high school. And I heard Umar Johnson talk about the other day that 90% of the African American males in prison had a IEP. They were in special ed, had some kind of special service to need. And so that should tell you something as well. And so we got a lot of work to do. And we have a lot of work to do if we want to make changes. And we need to make changes now because the world is changing. And if we don't change, people are going to continue to just overstep us. Like when you grew up, did you see that the stores in your community was owned and operated by Black people? And now we don't have Black people. The advantage of Black people owning where they live is because you keep the money in the community. Now all the money that we make leave our community. And so if the money is leaving, it runs down our community. And so there's a lot of issues that we need to solve and not talk about. So this is why we keep doing things. Okay, I do things with the education and trying to make a difference in the community. It's nothing like having pride when you go into somewhere, so know that you're supposed to be there. So, and I think, learning about your history is one of the ways to get that started.
You're absolutely right in everything that you're saying. We are the ones that we've been waiting for. We're the ones who are going to be expected to make the change. And it's great to because sometimes we can be burdened by just, surviving for ourselves, right? Just making sure that we can, get to work, or we're making payroll in our businesses that we're working in. But it's important to be reminded of the work and the children and the people around us, and how necessary it is for us to support and encourage one another. So I thank you for that today. I thank you for the work that you're doing, and thank you for coming on and sharing your insight.
I thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And thank you all for listening. We'll be back again next week with another great guest. Take care.
The Business First podcast is hosted and produced by Sonia Alleyne. Executive producer Ken Johnson. Find the Business First podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Odyssey, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, TuneIn, or wherever you get your podcast. On social media on IG at business_first_podcast. Follow the Mean Old Line Media Podcast Network on IG at Mean Old Line Media. Get the Mean Old Line Media app in the App Store or Google Play. The Business First podcast is a Mean Old Line Media production.